Joe, do you want to tell everybody who you are?
Yeah, so I'm work in the membership and events team in ICS. So a lot of you might be familiar with me. Um, so um, Glad to have you on board for this series, Niall. Thanks very much. Um,
Sure. So let's get the show on the road. Let me hit my little button here so I can see what's happening. Okay, right. We're going to go through a quick scenario here of what we're seeing is typically happening in digital transformations and why, according to Bain, 75% fail to see to complete or to have the value they promised. McKinsey are saying something similar. All of the research is saying the vast majority of digital transformations fail to deliver a return on capital invested. And many times it's because we underinvest and we just tinker at the edges. Sometimes we overpromise, underdeliver. Sometimes we just add complexity to the organization. We don't use technology and then say, well, what do we stop doing? What are we going to do? But what are we stopping doing in order to make capacity for this? And when does that stop? And how do we take out that product and service that is no longer yielding? And all the business owners are holding on to it tightly, going, but this is my profession. This is my profession. And so it's easier to put it out to pasture than it is to shoot it and try to move those people into pastures new. And I don't mean new jobs, I mean new functions. One of the key things that we always find is missing when it comes to digital transformation is subject matter expertise. They're always busy because they're subject matter experts. So to get kicked off, I'd like to thank Technology Ireland ICT Skillnet. I'd also like to thank ICS for the opportunity. So let's get going. Okay, here's what we find typically happens. The traveling salesman comes in. We're going to call him Mr. McCloudy. He sells cloud infrastructure. He talks about doing things ever so faster, cheaper, better. Now, Mr. CTO is usually talking to Mr. McCloudy, and he gets inspired from a technological perspective and understands and sees how this is much better than having on-prem or even the current methods for doing things. So he then has the conversation around how does data and what are we going to do with data? What is the design of data? What is the design of the architecture of our systems? What is the strategy that we're going to use? How much operational efficiency? And Mr. McCloudy has all the answers. He's fantastic. He's got all these little metrics that you can fill out, and it'll give you all of the outputs that you need. Now, the customer hasn't appeared in this yet, as you'll probably identify. It's all from a technological perspective, and Mr. CTO has got an endless project list that he's been asked to deliver. So he takes this information away, and he then talks to Mrs. CEO. So Mr. CTO talks about the business cases, how we are able to do more with less, how it's all about digital transformation. And hey, that couldn't be wrong. That has to be right. It's a good thing, right? How we're going to create stakeholder value. But really, stakeholder value just means we're going to be able to do more with less. And the question that everybody's wondering about is, when we used to bring in technology before, it was never transformational. Now, all of a sudden, anything that has a plug on it, anything that has a domain address attached to it, anything that happens in Cloudland and Mr. McCloudy's infrastructure is now all of a sudden transformational. And so the problem with that is almost every tech upgrade of existing services is exactly that, a tech upgrade. We have been using technology, in particular since the 1950s, to make our businesses more efficient, to do things faster, cheaper, better. So why is that transformational now? Or is it transformational? And in most cases, It's not transformational. The implementation of an ERP system or a CRM system or some new method to deliver exactly the same product, service, or business model to the customer is no more transformational than upgrading from our current account system to a new account system. That's not a digital transformation. Nothing has been transformed. That is digitization. But the language gets confused, in particular by the leaders. So Miss CEO, she comes along and she says, oh, by the way, I have a pet project I would love you to do. It's an idea that I had. I was drinking wine one evening and I had seen this guy on the television and he did this thing. It was wonderful. And I would like you to do it. Oh, by the way, let's talk about risk. Yes, what's the risk of the business? I've got a risk register. Perfect. We're going to innovate. Yeah, absolutely innovational. So who measured that it was an innovation? How do we know it's an actual innovation and not just creativity or just a good idea? What yardstick did we use to say that this was an innovation? Cost reduction. Oh, I like that. Yeah, I can run that one through finance. And business as usual. Oh, that's going to be maintained. Perfect. Transformation strategy, insert consultancy's name, blah, blah, blah. That's good. This is what's happening. Now, usually Miss CEO underestimates the resources, underestimates the impact and the length of time. She negotiates something that is impractical from a CTO's perspective. And the reason is new resources have not been brought to the table to do a transformation and run business as usual. The talents are just assumed, but no one checked. So the poor Mr. CTO is sitting with this new list of projects that are coming from the business perspective and a few pet projects from Mrs. CEO, and then comes the landmine. So my pal Jim at IBM says blockchain will revolutionize our business. They were too expensive, but you guys can do that right. Let me know when the revolution is about to start and I'll get the popcorn. In comes the buzz terms, in comes the emerging tech, out goes the sanity, and nowhere to be seen yet is the customer. So Mrs. CEO, then she leaves this with Mr. CTO, and in comes Mr. Business. And Mr. Business, he means business. This is the business unit. He's just come in. He's now telling Mr. CTO how he needs an app to sit on a platform. It's essential for transformation. It's also something that he feels passionately about. He needs data and he needs a dashboard, and there needs to be some kind of collaboration tools to work with it. So Mr. CTO says, dashboard, sure. What business problem are you trying to solve, and what data does it need to indicate that the business problem is being solved? He doesn't know. You know, one of those, the nice ones with the nice graphs, you know, the ones that you can take the data and you can model it, and I need one of them. Now I'm being overly sarcastic, but this happens from the technology perspective, and Mr. CTO is getting absolutely roasted with limited resources. He's now got 100 programs that he needs to run throughout the year. He then says to Mr. Business, okay, we're going to take this app platform development, we're going to do it for you. How do we resource the maintenance of it over the next 3 years? He doesn't have an answer. He goes to leave, and Mr. CTO is following him and goes, look, the strategy that we had planned does not equate to the resource. The budgets that we had in mind are no longer relevant. You need managed services, but you've only got budget for the production. We don't have the skills to maintain this. It's at high risk. And the timeline you need it in, well, that's not possible. And just as he's running out the door, he throws in one other final pet project, and off he goes. So we're seeing this being labeled as digital transformation. If you're seeing this in your organization as digital transformation, then that's what it is. That's what's happening. So my company, Ionology, we bridge this gap between businesses and what the business leaders need to understand and technologists. We believe that the business leaders need to understand the business capabilities of emerging technology. You cannot write a 3-year strategy and not understand machine learning. It's just that simple. You can't create competitive advantage without going in and understanding the business capabilities of technology. You can't create an operationally efficient business, competitive advantages, without being able to talk the language and communicate better with technologists. Equally, the technologists are usually just simply taking on board whatever they're being instructed. They're seen as a cost center. They're not a value creation center. They have put themselves into this role because they can't talk about business and their effects on business. They're seen as utilitarian, a support function to the business instead of the beating heart of the business. So there is challenges from both sides that until they're done at a leadership level, will always find it difficult to enact digital transformation effectively, like the 30% of performers, higher performers do. And the worst kind is getting in the consultancy firm who writes a strategy with no thought as to how the skills and execution capability of the business is going to deliver it. The strategy gets signed off, thrown over the wall to the managers. The managers then take it, add their own flavor to it, go to IT somewhere down the line, and because they should have been part of the strategic planning process, but they didn't have they weren't brought in to do it. All of a sudden now, we now need more consultants in order to help at the execution end. It is a deliberate scam that's been put forward. Oh, you need to innovate. You need to have 50 projects. Those 50 projects need to be whittled down to 5. Bad projects look the same as good projects before you even start. Well, did anybody check the data? Is there any customer demand for this stuff? Is there anything we're doing here that we can rationalize this strategically at the start without needing thousands of consultants and additional resources to be put into the business? And the answer to that is yes, there is. There's a lot of rational thinking that can be done if technologists and business units could work more seamlessly together. Anybody got anything they'd like to input there? Anybody disagree? I always have a good old, no, that's not how it works. Anybody want to come in? Just if you do, there should be a little hand raising thing, and Joe will bring you on. So please, it adds great value if you can contribute. I've got some work for you to do in a moment anyway. So whether you like it or not, you're going to have to do stuff. Here is what I believe digital transformation is in a single paragraph, a single sentence. Digital transformation is the deliberate, strategic repositioning of your business in the digital economy. It doesn't happen by accident, it happens by design. It is about repositioning. So it's not just taking the products and service you have and lift and shift. You see that all the time when we're going to use robotic process automation and we're going to start moving to the cloud, lift and shift the old, but it doesn't work. As you know, from a technologist perspective, it doesn't work. It needs a new way of thinking. It needs a new way of planning. It needs a mindset shift. It needs the business to evolve and change. And to me, there is the strategy person, a technology pull. To take it and break this down a little bit further, I believe the word digital is simply a synonym for the pace of change that's occurring in today's world, driven by the rapid adoption of technology. So what we're saying here is digital is everywhere. It's electricity, it's oxygen. What's happening is we've changed so fast. The pandemic means that everyone ordered food online, went to work online, exercised online, prayed online, connected with family online, turned up to courses like this online. And as a result of that, though we now have full access to all of this technology that that is no longer in any question or doubt as to whether or not it's going to be used. Transformation in this context is how an organization is built to change, innovate, and reinvent rather than simply enhance and support the traditional methods. So you're going to transform, we have to innovate and reinvent, not just support the traditional methods. So in my world, there is BAU, the idea of constantly evolving, upgrading of business services as they currently exist. Then there's this world of experimentation and innovation, looking at the data, finding new white space, looking for new emerging markets. What's the big emerging market at the minute? Sustainability. What is your company's play on sustainability? What is its products and services, and how does technology impact on that? So, I mean, that is where transformation happens, where the value proposition has to change. I'm going to ask you a question now that I'm wanting you to answer. I'm going to bring up a survey, and I'm going to put a URL in the chat window here. Let me just put it in. You should all see this. Okay. The first survey I want you to fill out is I'm going to show you things that are typically digital. And thank you, Joe. And things that are typically transformational. So it's the harder and the softer. Okay, let me just explain. What are we talking here about from a digital? Well, if we're into clouds and platform, DevOps, cybersecurity, enterprise architecture, big data analytics, managed services, operational efficiency, mobility, continuity, disaster recovery, systems integration, and many more. They're all of the digital or technical functions of a transformation. But for a transformation to work, we also need people that are willing to adopt a change. Now, in my experience, people are not afraid of change. They're afraid of the unknown. So what's in it for me? What is it I get out of this change state? So you need my assistance. Why? I mean, do I come off worse or better? And quite often that's not even explained before we're starting to implement the tech. There's new skills and job roles. Understanding the business value of emerging tech from a business perspective. Security and governance and making sure that it's abided by. General digital competence and skills, understanding data, understanding where to go for data, understanding the question that needs to be asked that the data answers is key before the data has its value. Understanding product life cycles, if we're going to work in this technology space, the budgeting for that, the maintenance of that, the skills for that, the parameters for that. That's a business function. Creating new value propositions, testing it with customers, making data-enriched decisions, project prioritization. Okay, here's the survey that we're going to fill out. What percentage of effort do you think needs to go in if we've got 100% of resource, and these are the two, digital and the transformation, what percentage of our resource needs to go into the digital, techie, hard-nosed, tin wire and license fees, and all of the things associated, and cloud platforms and skills, and what needs to go into the business end of people, culture, innovation, creativity, process? What do you reckon? Okay, you should have the URL in the chat. If you wouldn't mind, please make your selection. This is very interesting, but I've run this a lot, and this comes out a lot. We're talking to the Irish Computer Society here, so I can assume, my friends, that most of you are technical or are close to technology, and yet we're seeing here that at least 90% of the participants on this call are saying that it is, well, sorry, it wouldn't be, but 75% of participants in this call are saying it's at least half or more to do with the transformation piece. We've got about, say, 20% are saying it's more to do with digital, 60% digital is 16, plus that little sliver up here. I don't know how much it is. This just says 20%. But we're all saying it has a huge amount to do with the softer skills, the transformation piece. And in the majority here are saying, the majority, by quite some way, 2/3, 66%, let's say, are saying it's got more to do with, more effort needs to go into the transformation than the tech. Now, here's the real purpose for this exercise. Ask yourself, how much resource, time, talent, and investment is going into the transformation part in your business, and how much is going into the tech? And I am not for 1 second advocating that we reduce the technology budget. I'm actually, you'll see, advocating we need to increase it in the right way, with the right parameters. What I'm saying is, and you may disagree, and if you do, please pop it into the chat. I'd be delighted to hear from it. What I'm saying is we have completely underrepresented the amount of resource and skills that are needed for that transformation piece. And in our next one, we're looking at why do digital transformations fail. This is actually the essence of it. This is the essence of it. It's because we just under-resource it. We under-resource the transformation. We usually give reasonable resources from the technology piece, but it's not easy. And I'm being very flippant in my presentation. I'm over-exaggerating somewhat about poor old Mr. CTO and Mr. McCloudy coming in. But I'm trying to stress the point that if we are to really transform our organizations, this has got as much to do with leaders as it has to do with technology and the role of leadership. So let's take a look at what some of the great thinkers have. You've got another thing. Keep that URL open. You'll find your screen changes as I change my screen. Amazing tech. I'm sure you'll agree. So what we're going to take a look at next is what type of business unit do you work in? I just want you to tap a screen. By the way, this is anonymous. None of the data gets scrubbed at the end of this. No one views it or does anything with it. This is a guy called Nassim Taleb. And Nassim Taleb is a Lebanese-American author, intellectual, and he's written several key books. I'm sure you've heard of one about risk called The Black Swan. And The Black Swan is one just about how organizations and businesses quite often underestimate the risks that are actual. Now, what Taleb is saying here is that in his book called Anti-Fragile, is that there's three types of business. There's the fragile business. Now, fragile businesses are disproportionately harmed by unexpected shocks. These businesses can be good at what they do, but they're not agile, innovative, or adaptable. Let me give you an example of fragile business. Practically every restaurant in Ireland when the pandemic hit. What do we move to? What's the new business model? How fast can we move? So fragile businesses just know one thing and they're good at that one thing. And I mean, you can be a fragile business. When the pandemic hit, many of the airlines in the US were going, government, we need bailouts within weeks. Ryanair didn't need that. So they were able to survive and become a robust business. They stayed the same and survived the shocks. Strong cash reserves and ability to ride out the storm. And that's what makes you robust. Now, the last one called Anti-Fragile, which is the title of the book, the word anti-fragile, Taleb made it up because there is no word for anti-fragile in the English language. And the analogy that he would use is you go to the gym and you push weights. You see, I do a lot of, not very much pushing weights with my hand actions. So you go to the gym, you push weights. And you actually rip your muscles. You're actually causing stress to yourself. But what happens as a result of that stress is that you come out stronger. And Taleb is saying that the businesses of the future are the anti-fragile businesses of today. And what they do is they proactively seek stress. They grow strong through uncertainty. And what he says is, how do you get uncertainty? How do you want to know what uncertainty is? Just look to the future. No one in their 3-year strategy 2 years ago, no one had the pandemic and a war in Ukraine somewhere embedded in their strategy. So the world is changing. Anti-fragile businesses look to those changes and see them as opportunities, seek to go in and find out, what is this new wave of change? How do we innovate into that wave? And how do we shift our value proposition in order to make that happen? And what technology could we leverage in order to enable it? Now, Taleb did not write this about digital transformation, but in my experiences, anti-fragile businesses are very similar to those that have gone through successful digital transformations. Here's my question to you. Which one of those, drop the little pin where you think your business sits? So we've got a few anti-fragile businesses. We've got a few, the major cohort here is robust. And again, that's normal because, I mean, when you think about it, the reason your business is growing is because it's found something it's good at. So scaling that business is what really it's all about. And to do that, you want to be robust. So, I mean, it's not that it's a bad thing, but what happens is when you hunker down, if there's shock moments and you re-emerge, quite often what you can find is the business environment has changed substantially and we're not really built to pivot in that business environment. And fragile businesses, it's not true. It's certainly many small enterprises are fragile because we're on startup mode. We're in small mode. We live month by month, paycheck by paycheck. 3 months of no cash and we're dead. So fragile business, it does not mean that the chef in the restaurant was wrong. He created the wrong business. It's just that they're more susceptible to shocks when the shocks happen. So if you're in that anti-fragile mode, I salute you. Well done. You could probably take this session better than I can. You've been through it all. You're constantly trying to emerge and peer into the future. You're looking for new waves. You're trying to ride those waves with innovation, driving and powering the value proposition. Your website's changing with new value propositions all the time as you experiment with innovations. Well done to those businesses at the very front. Here is the journey. I'm going to ask you another question around this as well. I'm going to explain what I think of these 3 stages of transformation. And I want to know where you sit on these 3 stages. I refer to the first as digitising. The second is transformative, and the third is some kind of AI-powered automation. Now, digitising can even be RPA, robotic process automation. I mean, we can still embed that and still just be digitising. We're taking the old and making it digital. So if the sales force goes from email to iPads with a form on it, that's digitising. They're not selling anything different. The customer's not getting any extra value. It's creating operational efficiency. Perfect. And we should digitize things that happen faster, cheaper, better. We're using technology, systems, and processes to make the existing business model faster, cheaper, better. And robust businesses have to do this. We all have to do it. Being there is not wrong. What is wrong is calling it transformational when it's not. Because when those unexpected shocks hit, we are not agile in the sense of we have a full arsenal of new value propositions that we're experimenting with that fit and click with better of new ways of change. Transformation happens when we create new products, services, and business models that work well in the digital economy. They're what the customer wants. Qualitative data tells us that, and quantitative data tells us that there is a scaling proposition. We're working to find those. We know where we are now, and we can articulate internally what we're transforming into. If you can't tell your teams what you're transforming into, how do you know when you've got there? We don't know why we do this. Quite often, many people internally are sitting going, yeah, no one ever says I'm not up for change. Oh yeah, champion of change. But they go back into the room and they look at things that are core to their existence. Core to their existence. What do I mean? What could be core to your existence? The amount of your job title, the amount of direct reports that you have, the status inside the company. If that comes under threat, do you really think people are going to go along with it? So what's in it for me? Does the customer know the new desired value proposition that this is going to take? Because when we move digitally, we're open to one click away from every competitor. And this is not a marketing issue. Marketers who are given unique value can make it's easy. Marketing becomes easy. Give me the same Me Too product or service as everybody else that can be found one click away and I'm not there. That's an impossible scenario, but it's not a marketing issue. It's that the business hasn't transformed. Its value proposition is outdated. And of course, the teams. How will it impact me? Now, the third stage we are looking at is automation. And automation cannot happen. Subject matter experts are needed for innovation, but the subject matter expert will not go to automation unless they've gone through the transformation process and seen value for them in the automation of their current role. And I mean, we need HR people, we need marketing people, we need finance people, we need the process people, operations people. They're all needed. And the biggest holdback for getting people to go really transformed, accelerate quickly, become into that AI-powered automation is because leaders, managers, and decision makers have yet to really define the value internally to people in order that they will willfully displace themselves in order to get at the innovation cycles. We're then starting to use predictive models, not historic financial data, but predictive models as to how things are going to be in the future. How many people are online searching for your product service right now in your region, in the world? Next month, there's predictive models for that. They're free to use, they're sitting there. We can tell what the future is likely to be with minimal risk. Then we can automate at scale. So many businesses will not do their own AI, they'll not build their own AI, but they'll use the power of AI. And I'm not talking about spam filters and security filters, some kind of, easy, accounts system that we used to do all our expenses and now an AI takes care of a lot of the expenses. I mean, something that really adds value to the customer that we embed in our own products and service delivery. That stage, that's when we get to stage 3. The question I have for you, my friends, should you wish to answer, where are you? Drop a pin. So I'm talking about the core of your business, not some initiative that's running ahead. If the core of your business, but we're seeing digitizing, I mean, that's normal. Digital transformations. We've got one business that's outside. So there would be very few that are right up there. So what is the role of leaders, managers, and decision makers when it comes to digital transformation? We've got to stop digitizing, not stop digitizing. We've got to understand that transformation isn't digitizing alone. Digitizing is very important. And we've got to start moving the business forward, leveraging emerging technology, being able to innovate, looking for those new waves of change, creating new products, services, and business models, and bringing our teams with us, in particular subject matter experts, so that they can see that the process of creativity and adding value to customers is really, really important. It's really important. And we're seeing this in particularly in small, medium enterprises in Ireland, of which my business is one, by the way. I mean, you've got to evolve, but it's now, because there's so many varieties, so many flavors online that people can get access to, whether it's even for physical goods or for services. We're seeing that you have to constantly evolve that proposition and start to use data to understand where the opportunity resides. Okay, I would love if somebody would come on and say why they put their pin where they put their pin. Any takers, please? Joe, have we any hands up?
Not at the moment. I just one now. We have Colm. I'm just going to let Colm speak now.
Good man, Colm. Thank you very much indeed. Colm, where are you from, Colm?
I'm with Norbrook Laboratories, just down the road from you here in Newry. So.
Oh, good man. My wife's from Newry.
So, I suppose the question is, a lot of this would resonate, I'm sure, with a lot of people on the call and stuff. So, these states or stages, are they cumulative? Like, can you accelerate to be AI powered to the AI powered automation stage, or do you really need to work through? Is it a maturity thing that you need to digitize before you do take on a level of transformation, before you get into the third stage? Because I think a lot of businesses are calling stuff transformation, but they're really digitizing. Like, there's a huge number of Irish businesses are still 25, 30 years behind in terms of what some of the US type businesses are doing,
Yeah, Colin, it was the latter part. You need to mature. My experience is that anybody who talks about moving to AI powered automation but hasn't gone through a process of transformation, first of all, you get such resistance and pushback on it that it becomes so difficult, and then we end up just anything that's digitizing gets labeled as transformation, so that we're in this misbelief. We're just a delusional state that we're transforming, when what we're doing is making faster, cheaper, better. And so I'm not against faster, cheaper, better, but your point is well made. There's many Irish businesses, many global businesses, and we're not able to get out of that into that transformation state. And it's not a technologist's problem. It's a leadership problem. And the reason is that if you take a look at how does data actually work? What questions need to be asked and answered? What is the business capabilities of machine learning? What actually is blockchain and what is it capable of doing? What is IoT and sensors going to be able to help us do? Those things can inspire, but they're not strategies. They're tools. I mean, it's like you're going to build a new factory. What's your strategy? Well, diggers, shovels, excavators, cranes. Right, okay. What's your strategy? I know you're going to use those. And the way you make strategies now has fundamentally changed. SWOT analysis, dead. Strategy by acronym, dead. All of those things, they're just dead. It's strategy by data, predictive model, strategy by understanding market forces. And the way the old strategies used to work is you take a photograph of the marketplace at any moment in time. And it's a bit like taking a photograph of a Formula One car. You can tell that it's going fast, but you don't know who's driving, their skills, when they're going to have to pull into the pit lanes, are they ever going to make it or not? You take a snapshot in time instead of taking the rolling data that tells you how the market forces are working at that point in time and where the white space is emerging, and be able to experiment into it to see how it's going. And that takes a new kind of leader. And if you ask me, which you didn't, but if you were to ask me one thing, is, will AI replace leaders? I don't think AI will replace leaders, but I think leaders that understand AI will replace those that don't. It's not optional anymore. It's just not optional. And as you said, Colin, it's many American success businesses, it's because their leaders get all of this stuff. Any comeback in that, Colm? I rambled a little bit there.
No, I think I see a big challenge just in terms of it's really around the leadership, that, like what we talked about earlier, a number of programs or projects here. I've stopped deliberately because I call it the meeting me halfway principle. We're not being met halfway. We have the technology to solve a number of the issues or digitize stuff, but we're not getting the level of support. Everyone's too busy doing the day job. They're not operating in two modes. They're not creating the space to operate in a second, more change-oriented mode to drive the type of change they need in the business or the improvement. And in the absence of that, it's a complete waste of time, to be honest with you.
Understand, Colm. Very, very interesting. I thank you for your contribution. Well understood and heartfelt. Thank you for that. I feel like I'm a radio DJ here. I've got two more, Ray and Tom. Joe, who are you bringing in first?
I'll bring Ray in now. So,
hello there, Ray. You're on mute. If you can unmute.
Yeah.
There you go. Hello, Ray. Where are you from?
Hi, Niall. I work in the HSE. I'm based in the Cork offices, and have a keen interest in this, right? And this probably will resonate with a lot of people actually in the call as well. Like we in the HSE, I work in disruptive technologies. That's our new title for ICT, right? Like we probably we're in the unique position that we're in all three stages at the same time. If that can actually, it is happening because we are still in the process of digitising. We're going through a transformation program, and we also have a number of. We've also repped as well the whole bot experience, particularly to do with COVID-19, where a lot of the HSE live queries, right, would have been answered by bots. So yeah, I mean we are in all three stages. I can't say the percentage, but maybe. Probably leaning more towards digitising, a bit towards transformation, and a small bit towards AI.
You see, Ray, my experience is that when you're not getting job displacement, you can get much easier acceptance, and where you're co-botting, where the actual originator of the respondents, for in that chatbot type idea, where there's another human who's just getting the workload lessened of them. It's much simpler when you actually go to start saying, okay, how do we remove and centralize all of radiology, because AI is going to take over that. How do we, it's when you're starting to get into heavy lifts like that it can become a lot more challenging. What would you say to that?
Absolutely. Like at a point you made there as well, like is that we're not downsizing in terms of staff numbers, no matter what we do. As a matter of fact, if anything, it's going in the opposite direction. So we decide to introduce or automate some tasks. We usually wind up by requiring more people. So the equation isn't finely balanced.
Yes. Yeah, you have my sympathies in that, Ray. It's very, very difficult. I know that the ambition is there in health, but quite often the wherewithal to be able to displace people into other roles. I mean, I know from having worked in health in other regions and countries, you've layers of management that if you want to get somebody into surgery, there needs to be the operating theatre, the anaesthetist, the surgeon, the nurses, the cleaning, and all of this could be handled by machine learning.
Good.
But no one's willing to take the step to remove the layer of management that's currently doing that. Yeah. And it's politically sensitive. It's unions. But that's going to be needed. Now, the thing is, what do those people do? They're good people who have dedicated their lives to doing a good job. So the transformation stage of bringing them into innovation to help them see what they could do when they're helping to implement this accelerates that AI-powered automation. And in the absence of, that's why I said like RPA can be digitizing, taking a process and automating it is still digitizing. It's not until you create new value for the citizen in your experience. If a citizen why is a citizen not able to go in and say, okay, I'm going to pick my appointment. I'm going to pick it at the hospital that I want, that has the availability that matches my needs, and the machine makes it happen. I mean, because, and how could it do that? Well, there's been 100,000 records in the past that could be used to optimize the machine to make that happen. But politically,
it's a no-no.
It's a no-no. It's a no-no. Ray, thank you for that. We've got one more. We're taking, I think, Tom, could you give us your experiences?
Just letting Tom in now.
Yeah, hi everybody.
Where are you from, Tom?
I work for the Law Society of Ireland, and again, this, I suppose, rather than the straight line across of digitising to transformation to AI, it's a bit like the HSE as well. We're in all three phases of it. It's nearly more like a circle than a straight line. But for us and me personally, COVID has been the greatest gift we've been given to for digital transformation. 2 years ago, I would have been burnt at the stake for a lot of the things that I've managed to get implemented in the last 2 years. And there certainly has been a lot of value to our members. And yes, some of it has been digitising, but the automation and the machine learning we've had from it, you know, if I could, I'd have a COVID transformation probably every 2 years to be able to bring forward things, because suddenly there was no option. The why do this that you've got in the digital transformation, your third line down there, you had no option but to do it if you wanted to survive. And that, you know, that brings you back to your type of business as well. But that was our experience of it, and continues to be, because everything you believed 2 years ago just doesn't exist anymore. That you know, you've been able to do this from home, you've been able to do this online, you've been able to do everything now for the last 2 years. You know, the sky's the limit.
Yeah. So it's how do we ride that wave of change? How do we ride that wave of change? And again, we're coming down to, are you a technologist, Tom?
Yeah, I am, yes.
And my guess is, given the right resources, you could deliver whatever it is that's needed. But a lot of the hurdles are not technical. Would that be?
Yes, 100%. Yes, yeah. As with all legal things, like you see it in the courts, you know, now having, you know, PEX IP as your video platform for having remote case hearings, you know, heresy 2 years ago.
Yeah, it's. I mean, let's not even start talking about what would happen if you started to put documentation on blockchain.
No, please don't go there.
I just see just quick one here. Andrew Johnson says, as a strategist, I still see use of SWOT, etc., and other tools to establish people, culture, process, technology, competitor, environments, regulatory inputs to help develop strategy. They're still valid, but maybe what you meant was greater use of data behind these inputs is key to creating robust strategies. Andrew, I don't see them as valid anymore, in the sense that you put 5 different strategists in 5 rooms with a SWOT analysis and you get 5 different sets of results. Put 5 frameworks for strategy that are designed around data, that measure competitor analysis, technically that measure cultural capabilities, with data that measure process performance through timings and process automation. And I think the old SWOTs and the likes die, but you know, you do this every day, which is more than I do. So I do take my hat off to you with having greater experience of it, and it probably is in certain environments a better thing to do. Susan has said, agree, Tom. Prior to COVID, I would never have thought of adoption as easier if there was no choice. Thank you, Susan. Okay, we're moving on. My friends, we'll keep this chat going. It's good. How long have we got? 35 minutes. Right. I keep clicking the button and nothing's happening. Here we go. So what happens in digital transformation? So this is all about what happens with leaders, managers, and decision makers. what I've done is I've broken this into 5. And as I think it was Colin pointed out, it's not really a linear. It can be a mishmash, or maybe it was Ray. So it's a mismatch of, it's got bits and different things. These 5 blocks are not just blocks in terms of they're distinct and different, and you know, one block is different. It's like a messy Venn diagram. But the best way that I can explain it is to put them into blocks. I think leaders, managers, and decision makers need to start off and understand the functions of these blocks and understand the role they must play in helping the organization move from digitizing to transformation and preparing for automation at scale. So when Ray's stuff was talking that we're going to start moving midline, well, Ray didn't say this, so out of clarity, I said it, midline managers in order to get surgeons into doing more surgery in a more efficient way. All of these blocks need to be understood. And we're going to just run through these blocks over the next 30 minutes. And please put up your hand if you have any questions. Joe will bring you straight in. Just interrupt me, Joe. Don't be waiting for a breath, because it's not gonna happen.
No worries.
You just bring you straight in. So the 5 here are digital mindset and strategy. I don't think you can write a worthy strategy in the modern day without having the right mindset. And I mean a digital mindset. Now, the thing is that the baker that's the CEO or the head of department is usually there because they were good at baking. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're good at strategy. And the success of being a good strategist, as a successful strategist like Andrew, would have come from years of studying the discipline of strategy. And being good at strategies does not mean that we understand how strategies are going to be made in the future, and roadmaps and plans, or whatever you want to call them. And we're going to take a look at that now. Most strategies are not strategies. Most strategies are to-do lists. And they're elevated in status by giving them the term strategy, because it helps people understand what the importance of their work. We're going to take a look at staff, internal, staff and customer engagement, external. What's the value proposition? Digital transformation is deliberate strategic repositioning of your business in the digital economy. What's the value we're bringing to the customer? I mean, if we can't articulate that, are we just digitizing and deluding ourselves? What innovation is needed? I mean, using tech does not create innovation. I can buy a license for anything for free online today and tomorrow, and Tom, if he's got free time, he's going to make it work for me. What value do I add on top of that tech in order to solve new customer pains, problems, and unmet needs? What is the technological scope of what we do? And many IT departments are wrongly positioned in the organization. They're doing a good job, but they're not positioned as the beating heart of a modern organization. They're positioned as a cost center, the nerd boys that will just deliver. And they're constantly stretched and under pressure, and having to fight wars that are not their fights. And data and analytics is most often the missing component in all of this. So what happens if we don't have the right mindset and strategies? We are in a perpetual cycle of digitization. Then competitors start to nail our challenges. They start to come up and offer better, cheaper, faster, smarter. Somebody's going to do it faster, cheaper, better than us. And it puts the pressure onto the sales team. It puts the pressure onto the delivery team. We're into cost-cutting mode. And that's a death spiral. And that's not because of the market shifted, is that we didn't shift with the market. I'll give you a quick case study in this. Did some work with an organization that makes insulation for buildings. The insulation, they're finding cheaper imports coming in. So they were able to put sensors into the insulation and start giving very cheap sensors. And they're able to start giving the thermodynamics and insulation properties and escaping heat to the people who happen to put in this insulation into the walls and ceiling. and give rough approximations. Now they're in the sustainability game, selling insulation. Now they have a unique value proposition. Now they have a dashboard. They've got software tools. They can give you all of this for you to put into your corporate office build. And but it would never have happened unless they strategically repositioned themselves. They still make insulation, but they leveraged IoT in order to make new products that competed in the marketplace. Now the whole competition is how do they utilize the data and advise? And so they're into this advisory role. That's just matured because that's the market demand. Did it suit their production facilities? Hell no. Was it easy? Absolutely not. They've now got DevOps running inside their own systems. I mean, they've never done it before. That would not have happened unless the leaders had the right mindset and strategic plans. They've gone beyond digitising. They're now into transformation. So what I will do is I just want to make sure that we all understand strategy and what strategy is. This is Harvard Business Review. It's one of the most cited articles in business folklore. Is by a guy called Michael Porter. Michael Porter has, I'm going to show you one video, a short video here, 1 minute long, of what Porter has to say about strategies. So digitization is in effect about operational effectiveness. And what Porter's saying here is that that's not even strategy. How we acquire buildings, how we run our real estate, how we set our to-do lists, how we incrementally increase what we did a little bit on last year, that's business as usual. Now, what's the strategy? And so he's saying is that strategy is about finding these new market positions. What is it that we're going to do to create competitive advantage? What are we going to stop doing to create capacity to enable that time spent to find that new sustaining competitive advantage, a durable competitive advantage? That's the strategic part. So what we find is that when that's missing, it's very difficult to get out of the digitizing block. Here's what happens when we don't have communications. We get resistance. We get resistance. We get resistance internally. It's never vocal. We get customers who are confused or don't see the value externally. So communications are an essential part of digital transformation. We need to have those to be able to reposition mindsets within our organization and to be able to articulate the value. Now, in my experience, when you can't articulate a value that the customer appreciates, unless it's very early stage in the wave of change, you cannot find people who really appreciate the new value proposition, it's a sure signal not to do it. So if you are into making cutlery and you make sharper knives and the customer didn't care because they didn't have a sharp knife issue, don't do it. It's a metaphor. I don't mean actually make sharper knives. It's just incremental increases on the old. We need the technologists there. They need to think the macro view from building enterprise architecture right down into the micro need of making new tools with low code, no code, testing new ideas, working with business units in order to make sure that the innovation propels itself. The people who are most often missing in action because they didn't take the time to upgrade their mindset and strategic planning are those in leadership. They're not grasping the nettle of what this change means. And so then what they do is they take marginal gains rather than taking step change. When those three legs of the stool are stable, we then typically find that HR come in and they talk about changing group structures, and we get some kind of R&D alignment that has to come on to do the early stage innovations and to help drive and propel the innovations through leveraging the technology. So that's a key component of a communication. If we don't get communication right, we don't get the right people involved, the right people in the room, we tend to find that we end up getting resistance, and it's never vocal. But to make that level of change happen, usually there is changes to the HR structure. It's a good indication that transformation is happening. The old jobs are no longer valid. The new jobs that are needed are here. And that's a strong indication that we're transforming. If we don't have a culture of innovation, we get random acts of digital. If random acts of digital are flourishing across the organization, we tend to find that it's because A, the strategy was ethereal. Strategy is a plan of action to complete tasks in conditions of uncertainty and with limited resources. The strategy has to say, this is where we are and this is where we're going from our transformed state. And here's all the things we don't know about how to get there. Here's 10 things I don't know how to get there. So the leaders have to write, here's how we don't know how to do things. That's a very different approach to strategy. But we'll see in the next seminar that it's the way all of the latest thinking is being done in strategy. It's all about the unknowns. Answer the unknowns through innovation. So incoherent projects can mean there's either not the right processes for innovation or the strategy and leadership is lacking in going down deep enough to say, to get from here to here, we need a different way of working. The other third point about innovation is that quite often innovation is confused with creativity or an idea. And we reward the wrong thing. If we start off with the customer problem, pain, or unmet need. So my wife needs flowers. It's not a pain, it's an unmet need. So that's what we mean by unmet need. But quite often, identifying customer pains, problems, or unmet needs is an essential first step for innovation. Otherwise, we can take tech all day and we can implement it, and we're now used to have face-to-face, and now we've digitized it and it's online. But have we really solved a customer pain, problem, or unmet need? Have we created competitive advantage? Or are we just doing it because everybody's doing it? Everybody's doing it. It's digitizing. Transformation is when you start with the customer problem. And in that scenario with Mr. McCloudy and Mr. CTO and Mr. Business coming in, there was no customer in that scenario. It wasn't driven from customer first, market position for customer, displacing competitors first. It wasn't built from that. So then what happens is, level 2, we need these good ideas. But the problem is we reward ideas as if they've got value. I had 4 good ideas this morning in the shower. Do you know where they are now? Washed away with yesterday's dreams. Down the plug hole. What am I to do? It's because of no value. Everybody can have them. Everybody can have good ideas. So what we do is we bring in these ideas boxes, or digital or physical, and all of a sudden Mildred comes up with a wonderful idea that in the canteen we should have better cookies. Wonderful innovation, Mildred. And all of a sudden Sandra, who is in the desk beside Mildred, her idea was maybe something better. The coffee could have been more fragrant, and she didn't get the award. So I'm not doing it next time. The problems come from the strategy. Here's the stuff we don't yet know, but it's needed to get towards our visionary state. The ideas are going to be utilized and they change over time. So we need them. Then we apply creativity. Anybody here play musical instruments? Any hands up? I'll not ask you to come on unless you want to. Anybody here play a musical instrument? Oh, we've got one hand up. If you'd come on and just tell us, if you did take your hand down if you don't want to come on. Anybody want to come on? What I'm wanting to ask is, how long did it teach you? How long did it take you before you were competent at your musical instrument? That's the only question I'm asking. Anybody want to put up their hand and tell me how long it took them to become competent? Any painters? So, Joe, can you take that on? Niall. Where are you from and what instrument are you playing?
Dublin, and guitar and ukulele.
Ooh. So, Niall, you just picked up the guitar one day and you were good at it.
Yeah.
How much practice did it take?
A lot, Niall. Yeah. Competence, I mean, when are you competent? You know, but you're right. It probably took 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. You know, it's a journey. You You get a little bit and you get a little bit stronger and a little bit stronger. It's all about practice.
It's brilliant now. Thank you. Thank you for that. Creativity takes practice. Niall got better with practice. So the point of creativity inside a business is that it needs nurtured, it needs practice. You will get better as you go along. When we run the on-premise courses, I always run this experiment where we get people to build stuff. And at the end of it, some of them work and most of them don't. And then you ask them, well, would you do it differently a second time? And they all burst into life. No, here's what I would do. Here's how I'd build it differently a second time. So yes, so you're starting to learn from that creativity, and your second time round, you'd never make the same mistakes you made the first time around. It's the same with these cycles of innovation. So what distinguishes innovation from creativity? Does anybody want to hazard a guess? Now, this is the Niall McKeown version of it, so it doesn't have to stand up to too much scrutiny. But any hands up? What's the difference between innovation and creativity? So Niall Carty has just created something inside the business from a technical perspective. How did that suddenly become an innovation? Anybody? Any hands up? In my world, the difference between creativity and innovation is that the customer expects it, accepts it, and moves from the old to the new willfully. Not because the old was switched off and here's the new. They love it. The customer says if we're innovative. Niall could come up with the best song in the world, play it on the guitar. Not so good. It's not likely to happen, Niall. But I mean, the idea is that creativity, the more we practice it, the closer we come to being able to get good at innovation. Innovation is not a given, and everything that we do that's creative does not equal innovation. Any new technology that's implemented does not equal innovation. And if the business is striving towards innovation, it's up to the leaders, managers, and decision makers to define what innovation means, the parameters around it, what works for innovation and what does not, and how that's going to be measured. And then we have culture of innovation. And culture of innovation is able to take the innovations that we have and make them happen in parallel across multiple groups, happening simultaneously. Why can't we do that? We don't have enough people. Why do we not have enough people? Because everybody's too busy doing business as usual. How could you get people off business as usual? AI-powered automation. So we still need the skilled people. We absolutely, more than ever. But they can't do it. They can't get up that creativity ladder because they're so busy. And then they don't want to move out of being busy. Everybody loves being busy. Einstein said people love chopping wood. In this experience, one instantly sees results. Einstein spent 10 years working on general relativity, just one problem. He was saying that actually the cogitation, the thinking, that process of constantly examining, having that space to do it, that's where the magic happens. And being able to create that space for culture of innovation really starts right back again at the leaders, managers, decision makers, and the determination to create the capacity. And quite often that means letting go of things that are no longer valid and showing the light of where we have to go and bringing the teams on that journey. Okay. We're coming close to the end. I'm sure you'll all be delighted to hear. No one, by the way, at the end of this has ever said, if only he talked for longer. Just that monologue went on. So I'll finish up here and let you go. So what's happening in technology? So if we don't have the right technology, our technology is misplaced, which I've yet to see it in a non-transformed organization being in the right place. And Ray mentioned something, that he is in an Institute of Advanced Technologies and being implemented inside the HSE. I mean, that is getting very close to the necessity, as assuming everything else is equal. So from a technology perspective, technologists tend to be sitting with the cost centers. Finance is a cost center, IT is a cost center, HR is a cost center. And anybody who's working in the business, the salespeople, the people who are in charge of product creation, they tend to almost be seen as the value creators. And everybody else is a cost. Now, for me, that doesn't sit well. IT will never be a producer of revenue, but IT needs to move into being in the heart of value creation. And that value creation process, it's not called in at the end by Mr. Business going, I need you to make this stuff for me, I've decided on it all. It needs to be that IT are in from the conceptual parts of trying to drive the innovation. So this now means that IT need business as usual teams, and they need to understand the business capabilities of emerging tech, and they need to actually have the center seat in product and service creation. Especially in government, we see this. IT are given another, or large enterprises, IT are given another project they know are going to fail, but they just have to deliver it because it was given to us by a senior leader. They don't have the agency to say, this isn't going to work. And they don't especially have the agency to go into my department and tell me how to restructure it, how to transform it. So you're the tech guys. What do you know about my business? And what I'm saying is it requires both. You can't have the business people instructing IT, and you can't have IT instructing the business right at the very outset of new value creation. In particular, they need to sit together. And most IT centers, they may have the staff to do it, but they don't have the agency, they don't have the authority. And so what tends to happen is you digitize silos. However, take a look from the outside. Let's take a look at HSE. Poor old Ray. He's still here. I don't know if he's here or not. The citizen who we can all relate to, because we all need the services. So that's why I'm picking on you, Ray. The citizen's looking from the outside. And the citizen doesn't care about our departments. So the citizen just wants the service that the citizen wants. The customer just wants the product or service that they want. So we need to be able to make sure that technologists have the right leadership and authority inside the organization. You cannot say, I'm going to want you to digitally transform my organization. Here's a whacking budget, but no authority to influence strategy and how the operations of teams work. Susan Kelly writes, I still think a gap exists between IT and the rest of the organization. Just as you've said, better understanding between all parties. Yeah, we'll go with that, Susan. Anybody else got any contributions they'd like to make? We're into the final 10 minutes. So any hands going to go up? Anybody got anything of their experiences about IT not being in the center of value creation? No? Oh, there's one. Who have we got, Joe? Fergal. Fergal Ryan.
Hey,
man, Fergal, where are you from?
I work for AMD, a multinational chip company. So everything you say resonates, Niall. I'm just wondering, do you think that IT is up to the job of getting repositioned and be seen as a value center? And I mean IT as it's currently, as we all know it, in terms of its people, its organization, its own processes, even the technology it uses itself. Or do you think we need to transform IT itself in order to move it to where it needs to be?
The latter, Fergal. Absolutely, you nailed it. IT itself needs to transform. And because we're so ingrained with technology, we think we are transformed because we get this stuff. But the whole process is when you pull the thread on this, you just have to pull the thread of it, and then you start looking at our DevOps, then start to look at our cloud configurations, start taking a look at all of the technical stuff. It actually typically needs to change as well in order to support this agile, more dynamic way of working, as well as being us understanding, how many IT teams have customer management liaisons fronting the front of the department. You know, business-centric customer liaisons. In my experience, Fergal, they're necessary. But again, when they bring the work back, it needs process for evaluation and pushback and all of that. So I absolutely think, Fergal, IT. Well, the reason I said we do it, that's part of the things that Ionology does. We usually end up starting with IT because it's hard to stand on a soapbox, preach it, and we're not ready for it. You know.
Yeah, super. That's great. Thanks, Niall.
Thank you, Fergal. Is there anybody else there? Hand up? Or are we good? We're moving on. Okay, we're down into the last 9 minutes, and we're just about to hit data. Okay, here's my question to you. Which comes first? The gathering of data, the data chicken, or the egg? The business question. What's the business question that needs to be answered? Do we start with the business question, or the business problem, business challenge, or unmet need, or do we start with the data? Which comes first? Like it's a 50-50. Anybody, we can put it into chat. Data or business problem? Start with the data, says Susan. Anybody else? Thank you, Susan, for your contributions. Much appreciated. Anybody else? Start with the problem, says Niall. Anybody else? Should really put a little survey up on that one, shouldn't I? I'll do that the next time. Business problem, says Annette. Start with the why, says Enda. Oh, you just come in from a curveball, Enda Murphy. I like it. Data, opportunities, problem, analytics. Oh, haven't heard that one before, John. How do we access this recording? Ray, it will be going live at some stage. We'll get in touch. Joe will get in touch with you. Okay, here is my metaphor for this, for when it comes to data and analytics. This is Tom, okay? He is in data. The business says, Tom, you asked for structured data. Here's structured data. Now, can you tell me the answer? Does anybody know the answer? Anybody? Oh, you're all quiet now. What's the answer? So you've got structured data, loads of it. 42. Good old Hitchhiker's Guide, good man, Niall. What's the question? Well, isn't that an interesting point, Annette? Thank you very much. The answer is, what is the question, says Tom. Absolutely. Hold on a second. No, I didn't give you all the data. What if I give you more data? What if I told you it was a spreadsheet? What's the answer now? What's the question, says Tom again. And that's like, okay, what if I told you it was a financial forecast? What's the answer? Here comes in Susan once again with the right hook, followed by a right hook. Niall, you're talking nonsense. What's the question? Okay, Tom, I would like to know, if we were to acquire this business, could we merge it in with our business, and could we make it profitable? Tom's eyes light up. He starts to find the cost structure, starts to ask, do we need to take the senior leadership team? What if we were to move it in by December? And all of a sudden, the action starts to come when the question has been asked. You need the data for sure, but usually without the leaders, managers, and decision makers being data-centric, outcome-orientated in terms of the questions that they're asking, the data performs no task. We get stagnation. We get stagnation if we don't have the right analytics, if that doesn't exist. So data and analytics are needed. Data is always going to be needed, but if the strategy, the mindset of the leaders and strategy in the green box is not configured correctly, no amount of data makes the business better. There is a clear tie between this mindset of the leaders, managers, decision makers, the communications of communicating the value to the customer to see if it's valid, to internally, what's in it for me to get people to shift. There needs to be problems that we don't know the answer to in the strategy where the culture of innovation kicks in. There needs to be technology applied to the business problem, because technology on its own is ubiquitous and practically free for everyone when you start off. So they need to link. And then analytics and data is used to try to answer questions. Data, again, is unstructured. Analytics is the structured process of being able to answer questions. But unless the strategy is littered with questions, we tend to find that the analytics goes unanswered. And what happens is the business stagnates. It just ends up digitizing a little bit more and stays in that circle. Folks, we have 4 minutes left. If anybody, usually at this stage, everybody's just tired and wants to get on. But has anybody got anything that they would like to bring up? A little hand has come up. Thank you, whoever that is. Joe, if you could bring them in. Who have we got? Let me see. Ray.
No,
Ray,
just a quick question for you there. Actually, I just missed a few minutes of the call, and I was just looking at the different stages you went through. What was the bit that was missing to technology? That was the bit I missed out.
You get frustration. If you don't have the right technology, and there is a video of this which we make available to you, Ray, if you don't have the right technology, you get frustration. So without the right strategy, you get digitization. Without the right communication, you get resistance. Without culture of innovation, you get random acts of digital. Everybody's piling in because they've been told to innovate, but there's no structure, rhyme, or reason. Without the right technology, you get frustration. And without data and analytics, you stagnate. It typically ends up being a project that gets thrown over to IT for the next 3 years. The platform's been upgraded. We've digitally transformed. Nonsense. Nonsense. Not unless the customer is receiving value or creating competitive advantage, or in your half, Ray, unless the citizen is seeing substantive value in it, in what we're doing. Then to me, it's not transformation, it's optimization. And since the day the blacksmith was put out of work, or the cooper no longer made barrels, we've been using technology to make things that are efficient more efficient. It's not transformational. It has to add value back to the customer.
Yeah. So it has to be firing on all 5 cylinders, so before you get any to even engage in it.
And usually the technologists are the ones with the decision making and budget to kick the thing off, but they don't have the agency to make the big calls. I mean, if you're not going to give the technologists the wherewithal to merge departments or work with the people who have the authority that are going to merge departments or do whatever, you're digitizing, and you're losing competitive advantage by doing that. You're not giving the citizen the services they want or deserve, and the leader has to handle the political fallout. That's their role, to make tough decisions, make sense of the rules for everyone. I will bring in Joe. Joe, do you want to close out?
Yeah, no problem at all. So say thanks to everyone for attending, and our next session will take place on the 27th of April. And that's why digital transformations fail even when technologists deliver. And then we also have are we simply digitizing or are we transforming on May 11th? So if you haven't registered yet, you can do so still on ics.ie. And also if you'd like to continue the conversation, we have our ICS member cloud networking platform. So feel free to log into your membership profile and continue the conversation from there. And I'd just like to say thanks again, Niall, for your talk today. It's very, very engaging. I look forward to the next one.
Thank you for everybody who did engage. It's much appreciated. Okay. Well, look, I will say goodbye. I'm away to see if the sun's come out here in Spain. I think it has actually, so feel the place heating up. So thank you again, my friends. Talk to you again at the next one. See you later.
Thanks, everyone.